Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Last Thursday.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. No complaints.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while since we've done this.
Yeah, well, it kind of has. We took a week off last week, so
We did.
You were with Dr. Longo.
I was. So I decided to do that, guys, instead of doing this.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can get back into a routine. Otherwise, we're going to have to change our tagline.
That's true. Not
'Cause
every Thursday.
Not every Thursday.
Right.
And maybe that could be the new tagline.
Yeah, right. Maybe it'll be every other Thursday.
Every other Thursday, yeah. Exactly.
We'll see. We'll talk about that off screen.
Totally, for sure. But if
Figure
you're here
that
right
out.
now, thanks for chilling with us this evening. Just want to say thank you real quick to our patrons, including Chance, Binaboo, Sarah, Liam, Amy, Miriam, Hank, Jenny G, Erica, Moonlander Spoons, Mary, Catherine, Logan, Lilivine, Debbie, Natasha, MB Sanchez, Nausicaa, Stephanie, and Jennifer. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And if you guys want to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/thehealinghome for Michelle or patreon.com/symbolic studies for myself.
There you go.
But we are streaming to both channels right now.
Oh, awesome. Yes.
And Twitter.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Tweet.
maybe like 2 people will see it on Twitter. But if you're on Twitter, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, what's going on Twitter?
Right. So we have an interesting show today. This actually, I'm so glad you brought up this topic because we're continuing the Summer of Love series, right? Where we're talking about the 1960s, the counterculture sort of movement, some of the key players. We talked about Manson, Acid, Hell's Angels, stuff like that. And today we're getting into the Process Church of Final Judgment.
Which is a big rabbit hole.
It's totally a big rabbit hole. I remember you were the first person that ever told me about it. And then we're also going to talk about kind of like their various sort of affiliate groups and people and whatever.
Yeah.
Which there's many. I kind of forgot. I was thinking about it today, and I'm like, oh yeah, this person was a Process Church member. That person was a Process Church member.
Yeah.
There's Process Church bands.
Yes.
You know, and kind of like a musical scene attached to it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into all of that. And you have a lot to say, and you've been digging into it today, right?
Yeah, I actually have quite a bit of notes because I was redigging and going, holy shit, there's so much here. And there's so many different connections. There's so many, like you're saying, offshoots, splinters, associations with many people of the era that are, prominent.
Yeah, exactly. Prominent people.
Yeah. So it's a good one. And I feel like there's a couple weaves in here that I'm really excited to explore. So
nice.
yeah, it's going to be good.
Right on. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, what do you say we drink some chai first?
Yes.
And then we could say hey to the chat, see who all is here, and then get to some of the info.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah, so we got some iced chai with coconut
Clink.
milk today.
Nice. Hitting the spot.
Pretty nice. Super refreshing. Having it with the coconut milk, it's really nice. It makes it really nice and light.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we just got done. This is more of a personal thing, but we just did a 48-hour fast.
We did, yes.
And so we just ended it
Yep.
like an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, not too long ago. We were on the, fence of like continuing to go, but the way both of us were feeling and then knowing we were going to stream today, it was like, well, I think we'll have a better stream if we break it. And
Right.
Mario and I have this tradition of flipping a coin, a special coin that we have to help us make decisions like that, and the coin typically guides us in the right direction.
It's said to break the fast for both of us.
It told both of us to break the fast. We both flipped it individually too. So we were allowing each other to do whatever came up, and it makes sense. I was feeling good. I feel like I could have kept going, but doing these streams and stuff, as we find out, it takes a lot of energy.
Sure.
And so when you're in that mindset, sometimes you just want to eat some food.
I'm
get
glad
nourished.
we broke it.
Me too.
I feel good.
I felt good. So
Cool. Right
here
on.
we are.
Awesome deal. So let's say hi to the chat real quick. What's up, Kelly Boyles? Excuse me. How you doing?
Hey, Kelly.
Sarah G. Howdy ho.
What's up, Sarah G. Inland Sea?
Occult 45, what's good?
Hey, hey.
My Cherie, nice to see you as always.
Hello, my lady.
Jen is here.
Hey,
there.
Jenny. Nice to see ya.
And then 5-gallon Phillip.
Woo!
Nice to see you. Some new names in here that I don't recognize, at least.
Yeah, that's
cool. Maybe we should just kind of introduce what Last Thursday's all about for the newcomers.
Do that. Totally. So, I mean, this is our opportunity to be super casual.
Yes.
And bring
indeed.
up subjects and topics that, are aligned with the things that we talk about, but not 100% in the same vein.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Mean, I feel like since the beginning of our relationship, we both were interested in fringe information, kind of grittier, darker information. You always had a thing for the 60s, and that's why we started this specific series.
Yes.
But just in general, since we got together, which has been how long ago now?
About 12 years
About
now.
12 years. Yeah, exactly. And we've just gone down all sorts of rabbit holes. I mean, we've done sky watching stuff and have seen UFOs for years now. The Process Church is something that we're going to be talking about tonight, which was like an interesting weave when we first came across it.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff having to do with cults and occultism and magic and, mind control and all sorts of stuff. And I would say that Healing Home for you, you're definitely, obviously, you're leaning more towards healing modalities and people generally who might have something to offer that way. Although you've explored other people as well. Like you've talked to artists and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of more of your thing. It's definitely more straight-laced and professional than what this is. And then for me, Symbolic Studies is more about symbolism, clearly, and my astrology stuff and my polar stuff and everything else. But we've always felt like we have a lot more to talk about outside of even those topics. Because in a way, we learned a lot more about some of the topics that we talk about here than we have some of the other stuff that people kind of know us for.
It's true.
So it just makes sense for us to have a really casual show where we can kind of let our hair down, if you will, even though your hair's up and I don't have hair. But something just a little more chill where we can kind of converse about some of these topics that we've looked into over the years that we still think have some relevancy too.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and I feel like if we didn't think it had relevancy, we wouldn't talk about it.
No. Right.
And I'll say, one of my things for many years had always been, before I kind of really stepped into the content creation side of everything, I always wanted to blend the quote unquote truther information that I know with my herbalism. Whatever I was going to present to people or whatever. And I can remember presenting this to a few friends, them being like, I don't know, that you might not be able to get away with that or whatever. And, all of you guys who are continuously tuning in and being supportive and stuff is proving that, no, you can totally blend this. And if I always felt like if I excluded this part of what we know, I would be not being true to myself.
Right.
Because it's such a huge part of my life and your life and the information that we know. And a lot of the people that we hang out with in person, gratefully enough, are in tune with a lot of this information too. So we've been, surrounded with people that we've been able to share health things with, herbal things with, symbolic things with, but also all this crazy shit about what goes on in the world.
Right.
So we've been, I would say, blessed in that way to be able to have friends around us, where we've been able to express both sides. And so to be able to now cross the threshold with the internet stuff and doing the same thing, for me, feels really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a good outlet. And I'll say that it's probably more closely aligned with the things that we just generally talk about anyway.
Yeah.
Just in private.
Totally.
When we're geeking out on stuff or when you're looking into things on your own time or whatever. So anyways, that's kind of what's up over here.
Yeah. So that's Last Thursday in a nutshell. So thanks for
Right.
being here.
Totally. A couple new people. Just wanted to say hi real quick to Chelsea. What's going on, Chelsea? And then also
Hello?
to Mari, artists here.
What's up,
going
Miri?
on?
Hey, if you're on Hank, tell him, sorry I haven't got a chance to call him to talk about his story with Lynette Fromm, but I've been so busy and just ear stuff and on the mend. And
For those of you guys who don't know, please explain who Fromm is.
Oh yeah. Oh well, Lynette Fromm is one of the members of the Manson family.
Right.
And I'm actually currently reading her book right now, which I'll say is pretty damn good. And there's some gems in there that I've been able to actually connect a lot of things and make confirmations with things that I've thought about because, you know, whatever. When you can read between the lines, a lot of this stuff is very obvious that there's a lot of fuckery going on. But Hank had mentioned in one of our last episodes that I think it was his brother, knew somebody who lived in the desert, and Lynette Fromm was a part of a murder that went on in this household or in the area or something. And so I just have not been able to have a chance to call.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he understands.
Call Hank. I'm sure he does, but just wanted to say.
Right.
It's been on my radar.
So there's at least, I would say, one more Manson-specific episode in us, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, easily.
And then just to tease it out there, but I think there's a Beatles episode in us.
Yes, definitely.
And then there's a Woodstock episode in us.
Definitely.
So that's kind of on our docket right now to kind of round out the Summer of Love stuff. And we'll see if anything else pops up. I'm sure it will, because even right now I'm thinking moon landing, JFK,
Hate Ashbury.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
There's so many things. I think like we could do a Hate Ashbury San Francisco episode because there's so
true.
much that we know about all of that. Just even past the hippie shit. There's so much about San Francisco. You know, there's a reason why it's kind of in shambles right now, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Deeper than just homelessness and drugs and whatever. I think there's a deep satanic core going on there, and we're seeing the results of a lot of this stuff.
You don't really believe in that sort of thing, do you? Just kidding.
Yep, I do.
Gotcha. Right on. Awesome.
Anyway, yeah, Laurel Canyon would be another one, Elliot.
Dude, yeah, exactly. Laurel Canyon, that's a good one.
Totally. And there's so much that we have stored in our mind chests here of information that, I foresee it continuing even past maybe summer a little bit.
Sure. What's up, Elliot? How's it going?
Howdy.
Decoded. What's good, dude?
What's up, Cody?
Oh, John Wills. What's up, man?
Hey, John.
John is awesome, guys.
Good evening, my friend.
Just so you are all aware, he's great. Yeah, cool. So what I was going to say, just to kind of kick things off a little bit, unless you had something that you wanted.
Just because you said John, but he has a Telegram channel called Lasers in the Jungle.
Yeah.
So if you guys are wanting to get to know John.
And he has an Instagram, and
so
he has a podcast.
Is it Lasers in the Jungle for everything?
I believe so. John, maybe just put your info in the chat.
Your links and stuff in there so people can know, because, Yeah, good
call.
Yeah, anyway, that just came to mind, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, I have a thought.
Okay.
And I've said this before on this channel, but I think it kind of encapsulates what we're going to be talking about today. And the thought is that, and I can't remember exactly what book I read, but I've read specifically at least 3 or 4 books just about mind control, right? So I read Kathy O'Brien's book. I have another one. I can't remember the author. Psychic Dictatorship in the USA is what it's called. I've read a couple of others just about mind control. And I've read bits and pieces of McGowan's stuff about mind control too. And the long story, the short version of the long story is that... and
Fritz
Springmeier, who we know basically. Yeah, totally. But what I was going to say is that it seems as though starting in the 60s, a lot of cults, were birthed. The origin story of a lot of groups like that lie in the 60s, in that era. And my understanding is that a lot of groups that were created back then were basically created by some sort of intelligence operation.
Yeah, seems to be.
And that along with that, these cults were used for all sorts of different mind control experiments, to do all sorts of different things, psyop type things, right? And it was really perfect because if one of, say, the cult members got caught doing something, or people were sounding the alarm that this group is up to really weird stuff or whatever, then it all falls on that cult leader, the guru of the cult. And it doesn't fall on perhaps the CIA or whoever else, right?
Right.
And so starting cults and getting people to join these cults and grooming people for membership in these cults and everything else, it was a operation. A lot of these groups, it was an operation. And my guess would be probably a lot of big churches and all sorts of stuff. Pretty much a similar sort of story or whatever. So when I think of the 60s and the 70s, and I mean part of the 80s and 90s too, but it seems like this is kind of not fallen by the wayside necessarily, but I just think there was a lot of cult activity in the 60s, as we're going to talk about,
right?
Basically, and that the origin story of some of these groups, very, very interesting, tied to other larger cults, as an example too, with the case of the Process Church, the Final Judgment. You know, so just wanted to throw that out there, is that when I think of cults and cult activity and communes even and stuff like that, I don't think personally that my first thought isn't, oh, this must be organic and these people must be sincere and they just had a perspective and they just wanted to find fellowship and brotherhood and stuff like that. I don't think that personally. I think, who created this? You know, what is there any kind of orchestration going on here? You know, how deliberate was this cult's influence and everything else? And some of the storylines that are associated with some of these groups too. Very, very interesting. But that's pretty much the main thing I wanted to say, is that it seems as though a lot of these groups have an intelligence connection.
Yes, I would agree. And the other thing that comes to mind as you're talking about this is, I think, too, maybe one of the reasons why this was so prevalent in the 60s is that, dude, there were so many people that were like, would be wayfaring be the name, or like kind of lost, or
Is that, I think it would be like a wayward?
Yeah, wayward souls. You know, they picked up from wherever they were. They went to San Francisco, they went to LA, they went to Austin, they went to these cities where there was all this stuff going on. Mm-hmm. So you had a lot of people that were very open too. Mm-hmm. You had a lot of people that were, they had maybe left their families, so they didn't really have a family connection anymore.
Right.
So what do cults and gangs usually typically?
Oh, they take over the family unit kind of.
Exactly. And as we've talked about before, one of Manson's huge things was, you know, he would have sex with these girls and say, you know, I'm your father, imagine me as your father. So this thing about why or how this could have actually been infiltrated or been a thing of that era, that to me is probably one of the biggest reasons why.
Well, to your point, that's a really good point. And I'll say that I think one of the big things that happened in the 60s that has probably been happening for a while, has happened since then, but you really can't ignore the fact that in the 60s, the divide between generations got much bigger.
That's a good point.
So with the introduction of television, or the proliferation of television, really, again, said this before in regards to all this stuff, but TV really took off in the 50s. And in the 60s is when it was really adopted. And obviously you start having all of these major networks and stuff on air, and these different TV shows and personalities and things like that. We've talked about it before, but this was like the decade where people saw war for the first time in their home.
Right.
You know, beforehand, you were reading it in papers, you heard reports about it on the radio, you were seeing photos, but you weren't seeing actual live footage of stuff, right?
Right.
So along with that, music changed quite a bit and culture changed quite a bit. That's partly what we're talking about here, is how much things changed in the span of one decade, you know, and kind of a microcosm of that for me has been the Beatles, and how the Beatles changed a lot in like literally like 7 years. It's nuts. They put out 12 albums in 7 years. And so
insane.
When older people are raising their children and technology is moving as fast as it is, and when culture is changing as fast as it is, the advice that you pass down to just say your child or to your grandchildren, it no longer becomes as relevant as it once was, because we are going through some sort of quickening. And that I think that during the 60s, there was a huge quickening that happened, you know? So the divide between generations, I think it's kind of speaking to what you just mentioned about these wayward souls trying to find this or that or the other thing. And because what's being promoted essentially is like liberalism. You know, it's always about progress.
Right.
So it's never about tradition. It's never about stability. It's never about foundations or anything like that. I'm not saying that conservatives have it right or whatever, but I'm just saying that with this kind of programming of constantly chasing the new thing, the exciting thing, the next movement, the next grassroots sort of thing, you know, it makes sense that a lot of younger people would leave their hometowns and they look at their parents and they don't see leaders. You know, they don't see friends, or they don't see people that they want to spend time with, or anything like that. Hundreds of years ago, just think about how different things must have been if history is what we think it is, kind of. But imagine hundreds of years ago, and you live on a farm in a small village or whatever, and your father's a farmer, and his father was a farmer, and his father's a farmer. You know, the kind of cultural aspects of life and a lot of the wisdom that you might be learning from like your parents and grandparents and stuff would still be relevant to you, because their lives didn't change as much as your parents' lives, and your life is similar to your folks as well.
Right.
In the 60s, though, and ever since then, too, it's like generations now, technology moves so fast that you're going to have, let's just say you have a child right now. In 18, 20 years, technology is going to be so radically different that you're probably going to be out of touch in their eyes. So the advice that you give them may not translate over because you're just an old person now. And so that's one of the things that technology and this culture creation business and how fast it moves, I think it's designed so that the generations basically don't communicate with each other, because literally it's like you're speaking different languages.
Right.
So think about the parent who was in their 60s, in the 60s,
Right.
trying to tell their teenager whatever they're trying to tell them. They weren't having it.
No, God, no.
They grew up in a completely different era.
I mean, this was the era of like rock and roll's the devil.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And all that kind of stuff. So
Exactly. So
which, sorry,
No, go ahead.
can be argued that it is influenced by the devil. If you're looking at major labels and stuff, the whole weave of
I mean, there's something to be said about all that.
satanic stuff, sell your soul to the devil to be famous kind of thing. So, you know, it's not that they were maybe not wrong, but I mean, that was the mentality, that this music was evil and you should not listen to it. And so maybe there's something to it, though, like learning all of the programming that came through this music. It's just something to consider. I still love that, a lot of the music from the era. So not trying to dog it, but.
Right. No, I hear you loud and clear. Yeah, for sure. And so we'll probably get into that with the Beatles too.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it makes a lot of sense. So anyway, so as you're talking about wayward souls, people looking for a family, people looking for genuine connection, love or whatever, fellowship, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You're going to abandon your hometown. You're going to abandon your family. I'm not saying that's, you know, it's like I left my hometown, as did you. You know, people move and people change or whatever. But there was definitely, it seems like it was a concerted effort to make that happen.
Yeah.
And specifically, it was to go to the West Coast. And specifically, it was to go to the Bay Area.
Yeah.
But a lot of people went to, obviously, LA and stuff like that, too.
Totally. But also, too, the feminism came through, and that further broke up the family.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and the war was there. So that further broke up the family, taking the father out of the home, or probably maybe not the father, but the son's out of the home. And then the mother is now burning her bra and not wanting to cook for the family anymore because because society's telling her not to.
Right.
You know, because if you do, then you're giving up your freedom or whatever it is. And so I think a huge part of this era was just breaking up the family in so many different ways, and they succeeded.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it really, I mean, just looking at it from an astrological or like alchemical perspective or whatever, but a breaking down and a building up.
Yes.
You know,
I can
so
see that.
usually there's a lot of it's like a twofold sort of thing. And the powers that be, or whatever you might want to call them, their awareness of this dynamic is very, very deep, I would say.
Yeah.
And so they know how to build things up to tear them down.
Right.
You know, and then they know how to make something new out of that, you know, out of that rubble or whatever. And so to me, it's very much like a Saturnian, Jupiterian sort of thing. The expansiveness of Jupiter and then the sort of compression of Saturn, you know. And so they do that with economies. They do this with pricing, with creating bubbles and stuff. It's their awareness of knowing how to make things grow and knowing how to make things inflate and knowing how to make things spread, only to eventually, once it's served their purpose, to kind of stamp it out and to actually destroy it. You see this all the time too with celebrities and stuff. It's like so classic. It's like they'll build up a celebrity just to tear them down, after 10 years or something like that. It's a classic method, I would say, that's kind of at their disposal.
Right.
So, yeah, exactly. So, yes, there was a lot of tearing down in the 60s. There was also some building up as well of just different programs and ideas and propaganda angles and stuff like that.
Right.
For sure. So, is there a place you want to get started with everything? I almost feel like just because it's the biggest threat to pull at process church stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I signed my notes or lined them up anyway, was to start with the process. Because they had such a big pull, I think, a little bit in this generation, specifically also the connection with Manson and Scientology. I think that those three things are really important to look at.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I say process.
Got it. Yeah. If you have a place you want to start, if not, I have a few thoughts. So it's up to you.
Well, I'll just say how I came across the Process Church was through Manson research. So I didn't know about the Process Church until I was reading certain books, particularly Ed Sanders, The Family. Now, there's alternative researchers like Neil Sanders that thinks the Process Church doesn't play as big of a role in the Manson story as people like Ed Sanders and other authors and Vincent Bugliosi say, which I think he's right, but I think that there's still a connection. I think that there's no way that a group like The Process was going and had a headquarters in San Francisco, and Manson was in San Francisco for a while, and he's into Scientology. There's no way that they did not know each other. There's no way that they weren't hanging out or something.
Right.
In my opinion.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I can't remember. So one of the books that we got rid of at some point was this Process Church book.
Yes.
And so we had this book called I can't remember the exact name of it.
It's called Propaganda and the Holy Rite of the Process Church.
Right.
And now this book was awesome. And Mario bought it for me for my birthday one year because I was totally in this rabbit hole. And the cool thing about this book was that it was a compilation. So the Process put out a number of magazines. That was one of their things. They were like into making magazines and zines, and they would walk around wherever they were at and distribute them to people. And so this book took a lot of the magazines, a lot of the articles, the photos, interviews from these magazines, and they compiled them into one book. And it's very awesome, and it's very telling, especially when you can read between the lines.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was the book that really excelled my studies into this group and also confirmed a lot of things. Pedophilia, satanic stuff, rituals that they were doing, also connection to Manson deepened through having this book. Because it was pretty obvious to me Scientology was all wrapped up in it. And so for me, it's like a huge chunk of this generation, just what all the things we were just talking about is encompassed when you research the process.
Totally. So maybe just because you just mentioned it, Scientology.
Yes.
So what's the Scientology connection with the Process Church? You maybe have looked into it recently, but my memory is that two of the members who founded the Process Church of Final Judgment, they met in Scientology.
Yes, that's correct.
I believe that they met in London, but then they started the Process Church in New Orleans.
Well, you're on the right track. So they did meet in London, and it was in 1966 when they formed the Process, and they met each other. Yes, like 3 years earlier in Scientology in London. They started the Process actually in London, and then they hopped around. They went to Mexico, and then when they came back from Mexico, they had their headquarters for the U.S. where they first started was New Orleans.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the trajectory of everything.
And so I have to say, just because we're already starting to talk about Scientology, so to me, the obvious question begs, what techniques from Scientology did they carry over to the Process Church?
Well, I have that information.
Nice. And then I'll say, regarding the techniques of Scientology, and then the history is like a whole nother thing. L. Ron Hubbard, and obviously he has occult connections with Jack Parsons and that whole storyline and everything else. But what I've picked up about Scientology, and actually, if people here are aware and they feel as though I might be mistaken or they have anything to clarify, please let me know. But to me, we've watched several things about Scientology.
Yeah.
Right. And L. Ron Hubbard gives me the creeps in a certain way. And he was a Navy guy. And so a lot of like naval military sort of techniques he brought over into his flavor of
Mind control.
Mind control. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
It's basically what it is.
And so one of the things though is that they're obsessed with tests.
Yeah.
And so you're always taking tests. If you join Scientology, you're taking a test. And then if you continue on, you're taking more tests. And what they've basically done, and I think actually Freemasonry might have a similar sort of setup in a way, that these tests are actually, these are just my words, they are like pseudo hybrid IQ tests, but they're also self-awareness tests. So what they're doing is they want to know where your consciousness is.
Right.
How aware are you of self? How developed are you as a person? And so when they're doing these tests, they're also unlocking, they're trying to unlock different aspects of self and different aspects of your psychology and everything else. So a lot of it is you're exploring like all of these hidden corridors with your family and with early childhood memories and everything else. And they keep on prompting you. So what about your mother? So what about that event? So what about your feelings towards that? Well, what do you mean this and that and whatever? So they go really, really, really deep. And all of this stuff is completely cataloged. It's all organized. It's all documented. And they love it, dude. So if you join Scientology, and let's just say you're a lifer, if you've been telling them your whole life story, dude, they have all of that on record. Okay? It's very militaristic that way. Like a high level of documentation and everything else. And so on one hand, they're tracking your progress of your conscious development. Okay. So you are literally on you're on a scale. So there's a hierarchy from people who have very low self-awareness, self-worth, low-level consciousness, everything else, to people who are extremely gifted and developed and have done that kind of work, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they bring people in, they're going to catalog you. Where does Michelle or where does Mario fit on this scale? Oh, well, you're only at a whatever level. So in order to get to the next level, well, of course, there's going to be more tests, but you have to read this book that we wrote.
Right.
You have to pay for this course.
The key. That we wrote.
Yeah, exactly.
And teach.
You have to take this course. You have to do all of these different things. And so as you continue to do that, my opinion is you actually are, in a way, developing your consciousness. You are removing blocks because some of their techniques, I can't say all, some of their techniques like being, I can't even remember what it is, but it's the electrical.
The e-meter?
Yes, the e-meter. Thank you.
Right. Which is auditing.
Auditing,
is what they would call.
Yeah.
Which the process had a different version of that. They adapted that, but changed the name and everything.
I could be wrong, but my understanding is that auditing, that flavor of it, in trusted hands with the right people, is actually effective.
Oh yeah,
that these techniques are actually real.
Yeah.
And so the reason why they would even want their members to continue growing and developing is so that they can assign you different roles and different tasks. And so then you could be the head of this chapter of Scientology, or you can work on this program that they have, or you can take care of this business that they have. Scientology, they have so much real estate. It's absolutely insane. So they're not just a church. They've got lots of side hustles, right? And so I think a lot of what they do is, again, cataloging people and then directing them in the appropriate place. And as they catalog people, they're also going to make sure, if you continue towing the line and giving the money and everything else, that you're going to reach higher numbers and levels.
Yeah.
So when someone like, as an example, if this is the case, when someone like Charles Manson comes in, or anyone else, and they test you, and they're like, oh man, this person is actually very intelligent, and they're very self-aware, and they have a high level of consciousness. Well, perfect. We'll use them for this psyop, or we'll use them for this program, or whatever else. So I think that that's kind of the deal, is that literally it's more of a chart, and they're putting you on this consciousness sort of spectrum. And I would not be surprised if Freemasonry and some other groups, maybe certain chapters or certain lodges or whatever, are essentially doing the same thing.
Definitely. And they all kind of base themselves on the same model, like you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, it's all based in that. And it's always I can't say hierarchical. Is that how you say it?
Hierarchical?
Hierarchical.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's always like that. And the process is no different. And so the members, the founders, were Robert de Grimston and Mary Ann McLean. And so these were the people that were in Scientology first, met in Scientology. The story is that Scientology kicked them out, but I don't buy that, because people that we know, a good friend of ours whose mother was actually involved in Scientology, like during this time and into the 70s, she talks about how like these people will make your life fucking hell if you try and leave and stuff.
Oh,
so
yeah.
to think that they would kick somebody out, people like this, I don't think so. I think the kicked out was them being released so that they could do their own sort of thing, because I think that these people, as you're saying, they were audited so much that they were, it was probably revealed that like, wow, they're very advanced thinkers, they're very advanced spiritually, they're very gifted, whatever. Those caliber of people are the ones that are on these higher echelons of these groups. And Mary Ann was an auditor for Scientology. So when she was in Scientology, she was one of the people asking the people the questions. So that's how she was already kind of higher level in Scientology.
Gotcha.
And so they had the hierarchy in that way. And so these two were known as the Omega. That was their title.
The two people who started the Process Church?
Yeah. So within the Process Church, their title was the Omega. And then now I have to refer to my notes, because when I read this, I was like, oh shit, that's really interesting. So there was the Omega, and then the next came Masters. After that was priests. After that was prophets. And then the lowest on the totem pole were called messengers. Which I'm assuming the messengers were the ones that were going out in the streets, handing out magazines, spreading the word, just like any solicitor, particularly with the religions, that comes to your door. The process had those people. That's
Right.
how big they became, and quickly. Because they, as I said, started in London. They started a commune in London, in a very affluent section of London. And then from London, they went to the Bahamas. From the Bahamas, they went to Mexico, which
Right.
there's a really interesting weave with Mexico. And then, like we were saying, from Mexico came to the U.S., New Orleans. And from when they got into the U.S., they had chapters everywhere. They started chapters everywhere, and then they started chapters up in Canada. And San Francisco was one of their main headquarters,
Right.
because obviously they knew what was going on in San Francisco.
Right.
Okay. And so all of this, a lot of this stuff happened very quickly, just like we learn about all this stuff, like the Beatles or Manson, or it's a pretty short window that a lot of this shit takes place in. You know, there's maybe 5 years, 6 years or something, and all of this crazy shit happens, and then there's a major event or something, you know?
Right. Right.
And so throughout the 60s is when they were moving around. And when they went to Mexico, they first went to Mexico City, and they were living there. And then there is a place called Shul, but it's spelled Xolo.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Shul. They got a bus and they drove to Shul, and they lived there for a while. And the locals were not having it, because they could tell that they were like coming in all black, long, like cape sort of things with big white crosses on their chests. Like they were doing it. Like they were for real with.
They
all
had a
this
look.
stuff. They had a look,
And that's actually something that's probably worth talking about at some point. Is like the process aesthetic.
Yes, definitely, and the connections to other groups and things and symbols and stuff.
Right.
And so the locals weren't really having it, and so just so happened a hurricane came through that area and it like demolished their living quarters.
Right.
So from there is when they came to the U.S. in New Orleans, which New Orleans, I mean, there's a lot of
voodoo and all that stuff.
A lot of interesting, darker energies there. But the thing that I put together with the Mexican connection. Now, anyone who's looked into the Process Church, or if you haven't, they have a thing with dogs.
Yeah, German Shepherds.
Elastins, actually.
Oh.
And I think German Shepherds too. Like in that book, a lot of them are German Shepherds. But first off, it was these Elastin. I think that's how you say it, the breed. And they would travel with these dogs. So they like took them to Mexico with them and everything. But they were very prominent and important to them. Now, there is a dog god. It's an Aztec dog god. And his name is Shtul, which is very close to the city that they lived in. The pronunciation, the spelling. Shtul was a dog of the underworld. And the story of Shtul is that...
I think, is it that one right there?
That's the city they lived in.
And then where's the dog name?
Right here.
Okay.
So it's just it's a very similar name.
Yeah, sure.
And so he's the dog god, the Aztec dog god. And the thing of him is that he's the dog of the underworld, and that he was sent to the underworld to collect bones. And he got to the underworld, he collected the bones, and he was traveling back to Earth or this realm, whatever you want to call it. And the gods or the lords of the underworld set up a trap for him. And he fell into the trap and he died because he fell to his death. And then the story goes is that he reincarnated, but he like reincarnated back into himself because he had a divine purpose of carrying these bones back to the material world. And so he ended up doing this, and him and his counterpart, woman dog, ground the bones into a paste, reconstructed the bones to make different shaped bones and different shaped human figures. And the legend is that is the reason why the human race is full of different shaped people. Different shapes, different sizes,
tall,
different
short,
builds, whatever. So that's the Aztec version of why we are different. And this underworld dog is basically the origin story of it. He's also connected to twins. He's also connected to deformities. He's connected to sickness. He's connected to, there was something else that's a little bit more darker. Misfortune he's connected to. So all of these themes kind of go along with the process. So when I learned that, and then I learned the similarity of the name of the dog and the town they were living in, I was like, this is a weave. I'm just speculating here, but is there a deeper connection? And then their connection with the dogs, it's uncanny a little bit. And so did they know about this Aztec dog? Is kind of what I'm getting at. And they could have, but they could have not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, just to say, Death is even the name of one of their magazines that they release.
Yes.
So the compilation book that we had includes a death issue, a fear issue, and I believe a sex issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very much related to Scorpio. All of these things, I would say.
Yeah.
And so even Scorpio being the time of Halloween, being the time of the Day of the Dead, it's believed that the veil is thin in Scorpio, right?
Yeah, and the Day of the Dead, this dog is like a very important figure.
Yeah.
With the Day of the Dead.
Totally.
Just a heads up.
And so dogs are associated with the underworld oftentimes. There's lunar and solar symbolism tied to the dog. And you can see the dog underworld connection with Anubis as well, who's like the guardian of the underworld, of that gate. Right. And so it's interesting because this is just a side weave or whatever, but I can't help it. So there's a lot of people right now who are saying that America is actually the old world, and Europe and even the Middle East and stuff like that, that's more of the new world. And so it's interesting. A lot of people think that a lot of the Egyptian myths originated in the Americas and then were exported, say, to Egypt, you know. And so when you're looking at an Egyptian statue of Anubis, are you looking at a dog that they would have even had access to, that they ever would have seen?
Ah.
This dog, I'm pretty sure it's the same dog, looks very similar to Anubis.
Ah, yeah. This one, yes.
So some people think that Anubis in Egypt, when you look at statues and artwork of Anubis, it's actually referencing this dog right here.
The Aztec dog.
The Aztec dog.
Yeah, because I was looking at photos. I'm like, damn, that's a striking dog.
Is it
like
black
chiseled.
and...
Yeah, and the ears are very pointed.
Yeah, exactly.
And it has a very chiseled snout.
Exactly.
And it's like very statuesque.
Yeah,
I would say.
Totally. So some people are looking at Egyptian statues and they're like, or Egyptian artwork too, and they're like, wait a second, was it even around over there? And then they're finding American counterparts. They're like, oh shit, this looks like a bobcat, or this looks like this bird or that bird or whatever. And that dog is one of them. Longo did, I don't think they talked about it the whole episode, but he went in on it with a few people.
Interesting.
And that's their conclusion, is that this dog is Anubis.
Well, I'll say for people that are watching, and if you want to look up this dog, if you've never seen him, the spelling is Xolo.
Yeah.
So look him up if you want to see photos.
It looks like he kind of has like wiry hair sort of thing.
Yep.
Just like rough looking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So anyway, and he looks like he's meant for the desert and hot areas, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there's another kind of connection
totally
with all of that. So yeah, that was an interesting weave that I had to share because I'm like, you know, whether or not there's a connection and the process knew any of this, I don't know. But to me, I found it interesting. So back to the methods that Scientology used. So we talked about auditing and the e-meter.
Yep.
Now the process, they adapted this same technique of getting into a person's subconscious and you know, getting in there, whatever. And they called it processing. Shocker. No pun intended. Okay. They called it processing, and they used something called the P scope.
Oh, what's that?
Well, I'm assuming it's the processing scope.
I know, but what is it?
I don't know. I didn't. I haven't jumped that far down.
Okay.
So we can look into that. But
boring. Just kidding.
But
that's fine.
Yeah, the P scope was what the process used, and so I thought that was really interesting, for sure.
It could have literally been something very similar to the e-meter.
Yeah, or it literally could have been like a scope, like that they're like just watching your body language, or they're able to do something. I don't know, but yeah, it's worth looking into it for sure, because I'd love to know what it actually is.
Totally.
And so just a few things too, like before the process like was a thing. So this Marianne woman, who was like one of the founders, she's originally from Scotland, and she was like a high-end prostitute. So that was her profession. She was a prostitute for wealthy people before she got involved with Scientology, before she was involved with the process. Now, anybody who studies cults knows that sex is a major thing. Even if the cult says, now the process does say this, you must abstain from sex, you abstain from this and that. They're all into orgies and stuff. They always say that to make it look like they're not into that kind of thing. And then there's like an underlying, even if it's just the elite members of it that have some sort of sexual hold on certain members. If you study cults at all, it's always like
sex
that.
is a big part of it.
And
they're going to control your sexuality, basically.
Yeah, and it's always kept hidden in a way. Right. And so, you know, the Rajneeshis come to mind. Manson was kind of like that, even though it was a little bit more outward, but he would like take all the girls away, like singly. When like a new girl that would show up, he would take them alone. Yeah. And then is when they would be doing more group sex after he initiated that woman having sex with her the first time, bring her back. You hear that about all these cults, so many cults that are like that. But they're the ones that are saying, I abstain from this or this and that, and they're not actually. And it's just like a way to control a person. They might make the minion class of the cult abstain. They might be abstaining, but they they groom and cherry pick the people.
Well, it makes perfect sense too, because you're going to attract people you can more than likely turn at some point. that I think by not making that public, you're probably going to get more recruits that way. Where if you made that known, obviously it doesn't benefit them. I think.
Yeah, right.
It makes more sense for them to keep it hush hush.
Yeah.
And then eventually you find out, oh shit, okay, that's what they do, and that's how they roll. It kind of reminds me, it's like no different than a lot of the Hollywood stuff that people have said is like, oh yeah, you'll start off, and if you're an actor or I don't know something, if you're somehow in the industry, eventually you're going to find yourself probably at a party that towards the later hours there's going to be a group that goes off to a different room, and you might get invited and this and that, and it becomes more hardcore, so you would never know that if you were just a low level person or just got there or something like that.
Right.
But eventually you're going to realize like, oh no, these guys are into some wild stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So that's kind of how I think about it with this stuff. And then, one of the other details while they had all these chapters like throughout, the US and Canada and whatever, they also still kept they had a London headquarters as well. And so one of the things that they had in London was they had a coffee shop that was called the Satan's Cavern. That's one of the deals. And I always remember learning that detail and being like, okay, I know that there's like a shock value to it or whatever, but the thing about the process is that they worshipped multiple gods.
They had 4 main ones, right?
4 main ones. So it was Jehovah, Lucifer, Satan, and Christ. Those were the 4 gods that they worshipped and looked to. And the thing about it was they would tell their members that you get to pick what god you resonate with the most. And that was one of their things. And you could resonate or feel as though you resonate with multiple of these gods. And I wanted to read the actual name or like how they classify these because...
just real quick, they referred to these 4 deities as the great gods of the universe.
There you go.
I came to find out recently.
No, that's a good one. And
which to me, I almost feel like there's not enough variety with it. It's just kind of they're all like men. There is a feminine angle to Satan.
Right, there was no god. There was no goddess.
But there's no goddess, and it just seems like it's lacking variety, in my opinion, because people even argue if at least 2 or 3 of these deities are like the same thing.
Right.
And some people would say, basically, yeah. Others would say, of course not, But anyways, it's just strange. I remember the first time hearing that, I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. And then now hearing it again, I'm like, man, it seems like there should be a wider spectrum or something.
Yeah, it's pretty limited. And
so anyway.
And it's, I mean, for whatever reason, it's like a strategic thing. But so they had these 4 gods. So Jehovah to them, this is what these gods individually represented to them. Jehovah is strength, Lucifer, the light, obviously. Satan was separation, and Christ was unification. And so I think that it's interesting that they had these things and that you could worship the multiple ones. So what then somebody was like, oh, I'm worshiping all 4 or whatever. But they would also relate this to like, they're not gods to be looked upon like a god. It's like aspects of all of us. Was one of the other things that they would tell people, so they were also then kind of blending. It's not atheist thought, but they're almost then like taking the God out of them. And they're saying like, no, but they're part of all of us. And I guess you could say that, we have a godly side, we have a devilish side, there's that kind of thing. But I think that there's probably some weird programming thing that went on with that aspect of it.
You can, I would say personally, that mentality, there's a positive side to that, and there's a potentially negative side to that as well.
Yeah, it's like
that it could be twisted or manipulated.
And it's the blurring of the lines as usual, as a lot of these things always do. Things aren't totally clear. There's always like a gray area that something gets blended and you're like, what? Wait, now I'm not clear, on what's going on.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the main goals of a lot of these organizations or cults or whatever you want to call it, is like, they don't want people to be clear. It's like a lot of times these people have been either mind controlled or they're traumatized or whatever, and they're not thinking clearly, which is why they're allowing someone to lead them like they're being led, or control them like they're being controlled.
Right.
So I think the blurring of the lines is a very important thing within so many things like this, but specifically the cults.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would say so. It reminds me, the four deities, their logo is, they have two variations of a logo. They have one that is very squared, and then they have one that looks more like it almost like it looks like a manipulated iron cross or something, kind of, in a way.
Yeah.
But there's four tips regardless. And so it makes me wonder if it's having to do with these four deities.
Oh.
You know, because that's their main symbol. And they're not shy, just like with the thumbnail that we used today, to use the cross.
Right.
Either. So I'm pretty sure the guy has the kind of curvy variation on his chest in the thumbnail, but then they have a more angular sort of thing. It looks kind of like quasi, swastika-ish in a way, I would say.
It does.
There's like four arms to it, sort of thing. So I don't know.
And there's a center point.
And there's a center point. Yeah.
So, which might go along with their philosophy of like all four of these things are a part of you.
Yeah.
So that center
totally.
being you, the sacred center. But
Yeah.
these four circle around you, within you, without you, whatever you want to say.
Right.
And so I think that there's something to be said about that symbolism, and then you, as you said, looks a lot like the swastika and Iron Cross stuff, which interesting connections there.
Uh-huh.
One of the other things too, gosh, I just kind of lost my thought, but
I have something if you want a second.
I was just going to say with the Manson stuff, Manson, now he was visited by two members of the process in jail. This is the story. Story is that he was visited by two members, and no one seems to know what they talked about, but shortly after he was visited in prison by the two process members, they published an article, a poem written by Manson in their Death magazine issue. So now to me, that seems like a little bit of a buyout, or, okay, you keep your mouth shut. Kind of, what are you going to do for me if I keep my mouth shut? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll publish you in our magazine. Okay, fair enough. So that's kind of where my mind goes when I hear that. That's why I do think that there was a connection. I think canceling out a potential connection with the process is there's a folly there, because I think that that's what they want you to do. I think that they want it to seem like there's no connection to this. But I think that the process is so powerful, and they're still a thing in different forms today, and they're connected to other shady shit like murders and stuff like that throughout the United States, that I think that they're just part of a bigger program. And Manson was part of a big program, but Manson was the one that kind of just got nixed out of he was part of it the whole time up until he died, whatever he is, but I just think with the process, they're too powerful, and there's too much of an underground network of them to not have connections to Manson.
Okay, so how about let's do this, if you think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's check the chat.
Yeah.
See what's
I'd
going
love to hear
on.
what
There's some
saying.
new people here. There's a handful of people here too.
Sweet.
And then we could talk about some of these powerful people that they've been associated with.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because there's a few people that we haven't mentioned yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's going on, guys?
Welcome, welcome. Hello.
Yes, hello indeed. So let me scroll up here and see what you guys have been saying. I saw a few comments come through that were interesting. Okay, so we're probably around here, I would say. Indeed, Decody says, make sure to hit that like button.
Yes, please.
Yep. Fritz Springmeyer, he's an interesting guy. I've had a handful of conversations with him in person. Actually, funny enough that this is something I'm highlighting right now. I let him borrow the Process Church book that we had.
That's right. I remember that.
Because he was interested, because I was talking to him one day, and I was like, dude, are you aware of this? And I don't think...
He wasn't.
I don't think so,
I don't
right?
think he was aware of it.
And so anyways, we let him borrow that book.
Yeah.
For a little while there.
And he returned it.
He did return it. Yeah, totally. On time.
Which you never know, too, when you borrow out books.
What's up, Cozy Crone?
Hey!
Yes, I would say Scientology is a cult for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. What's up, Hank? He's on a Zoom call. It's all good, dude.
Cool.
What's up, Billingtano?
Hey, man. What's going on?
Yeah, I could see that. This is a good comment. Feels like technologies are Tower of Babel, separating us from communicating and understanding generations. Yeah.
Ah, yep.
So that's what I was talking about earlier, and they tagged on to that, so it makes sense. Let's see here. All right, I have to read this because it's Lovecraft. Decoded says H.P. Lovecraft also has a had in the sci-fi flavor of Scientology. He said his writings were fiction. Hubbard claimed his to be nonfiction. People love the story and follow kind of wild. I have a lot of stuff to say about Lovecraft. I'm actually recording. Shout out Juan from the Juan on Juan podcast, but I'm recording with him tomorrow, and we're gonna get into Lovecraft. And I have like, whoa, guys, I've been researching Lovecraft for a few years, and I just finished a book that really has put a lot of stuff together. It's fascinating. So I can't wait to talk to him about it, and I'll talk about it on my channel at some point, I think. Gotcha. So basically here asking if the testing is just for blackmail purposes. It's absolutely for that, but I think that they have a concerted, or I think they have a vested interest. They figured out a way to upgrade their members and also have it benefit Scientology.
I think so too. Yeah, I think they use it for both things for sure.
Yeah, totally.
And if you're running something like Scientology, why wouldn't you? I mean, I don't agree with what they do, but why wouldn't you do that? You know, it's like you got dirt on everybody, and you understand the things, the traumas, the little micro things in the brain and the heart and the emotions that get them. And when you know somebody's thing like that, you can do lots of stuff to them or whatever. And you can do good things too. When you crack those codes in somebody, you know, there's good that comes from it too, but it depends on how it's being used and manipulated or whatever, you know.
If they know your history and your triggers and your desires and your hopes and dreams and all that kind of stuff, they can manipulate the fuck out of you.
Oh yeah.
And they're pros at it. That's probably one of the things on why they want higher level people to be able to look at someone's chart and be like, okay, cool. What's the greatest blackmail campaign, like someone just said,
right?
You know, to get them to kill themselves or whatever.
Oh yeah,
you know, it's like they figure all that stuff out. I think they know all those different techniques.
Because there's also blackmail too, to persuade someone to give them more money or whatever, because that's usually what a lot of this stuff it comes down to is money, as usual with cults. And then you hand over your identity to the leader and your money.
Totally. So what's up, the branch?
Howdy,
he's
Joshua.
saying dogs are an unclean animal, but also the shepherd would use a dog for herding. Totally. So shepherding, all of that symbolism and how it relates to the dog, very, very interesting. 100%. Very mercurial too. The dog has been related to Mercury and kind of Mercury-associated deities, I would say, for sure. That's interesting that even Billington was saying like Cerberus, the three-headed dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why on the Hermit card, in Crowley's version of the Hermit card, there is Cerberus. And the Hermit, in my opinion, essentially is an aged shepherd. He's an aged good shepherd. So I think he, in a lot of ways, the younger version of the Hermit is actually very Christ-like. It's the good shepherd, basically.
Interesting. That's a good one.
Yeah. Collecting bones is very Saturnian, says the branch. I agree. Totally. Right, so that's the dog, the shorter version of it.
Yep.
And then apparently this is the longer version.
Okay.
Let's see here. This is funny. Why do all the Scientology terms sound like accounting terms? Auditing, processing.
Right. That's a really great point. Because they're all about money. I mean, think about it. It's money and status. You've got Hollywood stars and this and that, and I mean, probably has a lot to do with it.
So let's hear some chatter about Bach Saga, Longo, Old World, Florida.
I also have information on the hog farm too, which is
yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, which is another commune. That's still running.
Totally. What's up, Jason?
What's up, Jason? Still very powerful still. And just everyone.
What's up, Slick? Nice to see you, dude.
Hey, Slick. Everyone knows too that communes like really took off in the 60s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Totally. Zarelith, what's good, man?
Hello.
Yes, we're gonna get into this. So Brave New Order Films, what's going on, man? Cheers from Vegas. I've heard the Process Church is connected to animal rescue cults. Yes, indeed. We're gonna get to that.
Yep.
In Oregon, I think their headquarters is Utah.
Yep.
I'm sure they operate out of Oregon though too.
They probably have multiple facilities. It's a huge organization.
That's one of the most bizarre things is finding out where are they now.
Yep.
And this is known like public information. So
Yep.
this was even on the Wikipedia of the Process Church page. And it's since been verified several times. And it's just very strange. So yes, well, I'm sure you have it written down already.
I do. Well, if you go to the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary website and you go to the About, it says the Animal Sanctuary was formed by some rough and tumble friends. Well, the process is pretty fucking rough and tumble.
That's hilarious.
So it's like they're not lying, but they're not telling you what their true origins are. I'm like, rough and tumble, good one.
That's super funny.
And heads up for pet owners, if you have a cat and you use cat litter, a lot of people do, Integrity brand is owned by the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. So
you know what's hilarious about that?
I learned that and I was like, oh snap, I'm not buying that anymore.
Dude, okay, so there's a few bands that are Process Church bands.
Yes.
And some of these bands will even use the Process Church logo on their merch, kind of in albums. I mostly see it in merch. Like they'll put it on a shirt or something like that. One of the bands that's a Process Church band is a band called Integrity.
Oh, I remember this.
They're like a hardcore band from like I think they maybe their first albums were coming out in like the early 90s.
Oh, interesting.
I know.
And to use the word integrity, where if they were what they are and what we think they are,
right?
Not much integrity going on.
I mentioned this to a punk rocker friend. And I said, dude, you wouldn't believe it. And they're like, no way. It's impossible.
Wait,
whatever.
This is my band.
And then I was like, I showed them artwork and I'm like, here you go, dude. Like it's all right here, you know? So anyways, that's a little tangent, but I wanted to highlight this comment from Slick. Final Judgment Aeon card. Right. And so second to last card in the Major Arcana, sometimes called Judgment or Aeon. So that's very interesting, that connection there. I've been in a few of the cults mentioned.
Oh shit, really?
So far, yes, you are on point. Loving your show. Found you through Juan. Nice.
Dude, okay. Spiritual Anarchy. Today I said to Mario, I want to talk to somebody who's been in the process. I don't know if you're alluding to it was the process, but one of the things I said to him when he showed me the thumbnail was like, I was like, damn, I would love to talk to somebody that was like at some of these meetings or went to one of the went somewhere with them or had a magazine in their hand or whatever, you know. Just saying, just throwing it out there.
No pressure.
No pressure at all, honestly. But it is one of the things I thought. I'm like, damn, to be able to talk to somebody, like be a fly on the wall. Yeah. Anyway.
So what's up? Take a little trip with me.
Oh, nice.
What's up, Benjamin?
Hey, Ben.
Ben Balderson.
Nice to see ya.
Yeah, dude. Always. Jamie Lynn. I don't know if we said hello to Jamie Lynn yet.
Hey, Jamie.
Gotcha. All right. Ben says, who doesn't like dogs? And he has a dog in his avatar. Okay, cool. We're getting down to the end of the line here.
Yeah, and that brand of cat stuff, it might be more than just litter, but they're usually sold in natural pet stores because the type I was buying, I stopped buying it because I have a hack for cat litter. If you buy cat litter, that's the cracked pine version, dude, don't get it at the pet store because you can go to the farm supply store and get a whole like 40-pound bag of it for like $7.
Yeah.
And it's sold as like horse bedding. So just a heads up, if you have a cat and you use those pine pellets for their litter, you can save yourself a lot of money by going to the farm supply store. Just a tip. But that's the type of litter they would have. They also had like the clay types and stuff, but that was where the integrity stuff, I saw a lot of it.
Interesting. Just want to highlight this one too from Slick. So Ralph Ellis floats a notion that Egyptian translation for shepherd is secretly two-sided, meaning also captured. So a king cannot realize he is covertly handled. That's intriguing to me, dude. I like that insight. All right. So All right. I think we're just about there. All right. Cool, guys.
Nice. Thanks for all the comments. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Seriously. Thank you for hanging out.
Hell yeah.
Um,
So pop culture, artists and
yes,
people.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, so people may or may not know some of these people are kind of like icons in smaller scenes.
Yes.
I'll say.
Yes.
So is John Waters, as an example, is he a household name? Probably not. But if you're a film person, you probably have heard of him. So John Waters was part of the Process Church. He's a filmmaker. He made Pink Flamingos or Pink Flamingo. I can't remember which one. If there's an S at the end. And he's a known processian. I don't know what they're called.
That is what they.
Right.
Yeah.
And so John Waters was a Process Church member. Genesis P. Orich was a Process Church member.
Look into her, him, it, if you have never heard of.
Genesis P. Orich is a very interesting figure.
Very interesting.
In occultism. And so years ago, before it was trendy and hip, he transitioned to a woman.
Yeah.
And it was because he was doing a ritual with his love interest. And so he turned himself like his woman. And so there's documentaries about them, lots of videos. She was definitely in the industrial music scene.
The band Throbbing Gristle.
I think
Psychic TV.
Psychic TV, thank you. Current 93, like those types of artists and stuff.
They also had another number. Yeah, we could
Go for it.
I have to look at the notes, but I just learned there was a different. They also had another band that they formed once they started incorporating the rituals of the process. So they formed. It was called Psychic Youth. So like psychic spelled PSYCHICK.
Right.
So Psychic Youth.
The Temple of Psychic Youth.
So that was the band that they basically formed and then really pushed the process stuff with.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting too. You know who Tattoo Dave, who's been on my channel to talk
Moonlander.
tarot. Yeah. I think he has an awareness of like there's a whole side of occultism that's directly very closely tied to the noise music scene and the industrial music scene that is little explored unless you're part of those scenes. And so that's like a whole rabbit hole. I can't remember who let me borrow a book. It may have been Dave. And it was like all about this type of stuff, which I was already aware that was kind of a thing. But Genesis P. Orich was part of all of that. Very, very noisy, aggressive music.
Yeah.
Hardly some people wouldn't even consider it music, obviously.
Yeah.
But
it's more like artsy. They're trying to be artsy or weird and whatever.
They also utilize the cross quite a bit, I would say, as just a kind of an interesting aside. And Genesis P. Orich, she died, I think, within the last like 5 years.
Yeah, she died of leukemia.
Yeah. And so, anyways, very, very interesting. That's a whole side thing. But Genesis P. Orich, if anyone wants to look into him, he was a Process Church member as well.
Yeah. George Clinton and the Funkadelic. I don't think he was a member, but in their album Maggot Brain, which is the album cover with the woman, she's got a big fro and she looks like she's like buried underground and she's like screaming in the liner notes of that album, they have one of the Process Church's like sermons or speeches or whatever, like a segment of it.
Right.
So that's a big connection. So George Clinton, that album came out in 71. And then also the band Skinny Puppy, which I don't know too much about. I've heard of them. I don't know really anything about their music, but I actually was going to listen to some of it today, but time got away from me. So yeah, they have the album called The Process, which has like lyrics.
That's what someone just mentioned.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. So Skinny Puppy. And then there was another one that I came across. I thought that maybe I didn't. I think it was just the Psychic TV other weave that I wanted to make sure to say.
I'm glad you just brought that up again. Genesis P. Orich, one of her things is she is credited for evolving chaos magic.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, right. So, chaos magic being a newer thing. One of her followers is a guy named Jason Louv, who's, I believe, is based out of Seattle. And I read one of his books on John Dee.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar.
And so Jason Louv, I'm pretty sure he helped co-write the Psychic Bible, which is
Okay.
like the official book for Temple of Psychic Youth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and even their aesthetic too is very interesting. It kind of reminds me of the process stuff, like the zine sort of aesthetic, black and white photocopy, high contrast, collage sort of artwork and whatever from different sources and all of that. Another person who was in the another person who was in the Process Church zine, Jimmy Savile.
Oh, right. Yeah. When we saw that, I remember flipping through that book one night, and I was in my apartment, and this was before we lived together. And so I was reading it, and I flipped to the Jimmy Savile interview that was in the book that we had. And dude, it creeped me out. It was one of those times where like it's late at night, you're reading, and if you've ever been reading something that's a little bit more whatever, or you watch a movie and it's dark or whatever. At least for me, I was like, all right, I'm gonna close this for the night and go to bed because it was creepy as fuck. And the photo they have of him and like how he describes himself and what he does and everything.
Okay, so for those of you guys who don't know, and I might butcher some of the details here, so feel free and clarify some of the stuff, guys. But Jimmy Savile got popped. I mean, it seems like it was an open secret that he was essentially a pedophile.
Oh yeah,
right. So
in like children's hospitals and shit.
Exactly.
And he had like a variety show in,
right.
in
So
England and
yeah, he's an English television celebrity personality, and he's been doing it for that career, that job forever. And I can't remember, my timing for everything is like really off. So maybe was it like 10 years ago or something?
when he died.
When he died and all this stuff started coming out about him.
That sounds about right. Yeah, maybe 10 to 8 or something like that.
So anyway, so it became, especially in like the conspiratorial sort of fringe alternative circles, everybody was like, oh yeah, it's like undeniable. Dude was a pedophile. He was affiliated or helped fund or donate or whatever to children's hospitals.
Yep.
So it's like he had like an endless supply of like children basically. And he was in the Process Church zine, and we bought this book, obviously not knowing that he would be in there.
Oh yeah.
But they have an interview with him, and they have a photo of him, and as you're saying, super creepy photo. His eyes are all bug-eyed. He looks like a creep.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I'm going to paraphrase, but I'll never forget the opening of it. The first question they asked him was, are you a moral person? And he basically says, by day I am, and at night is when the wolves come out.
Yeah.
That's basically what he says. I'm just like condensing it to those lines.
Right.
Right. And so basically saying yes and no. By day I am, but there's another side of me.
By day, when I'm at the children's hospitals and when I'm on my variety show, it might seem as though I am. But yeah, when the lights turn out. So that was very telling. So when we saw that article,
and that was from the 60s.
that was in the 60s. In the photo of him, he's young. He's super young.
It's young Jimmy Savile.
It's young Jimmy Savile, and people who don't know wouldn't know. And the other thing too, that one of the weaves that I just kept just coming to me when I'm writing out these notes and remembering all these memories of studying this fucking group and other groups like it, dude, children are always at the forefront. And throughout that book, there's photos of little kids and they're with the dogs, and there's a 2-page spread, and it has something, it's I don't remember the title, but it's something the children. And it's just like all the children too have a particular look. All their hair is cut in like a bowl cut, very, very popular in the 60s or whatever. But like, most of them are like blonde children and things like that. Not like that is like a thing necessarily, but it's something I noticed. And I'm like, dude, why is it throughout this whole book there's like children in diapers? And I'm not saying that that's like, children are in diapers all the time. Kids are naked all the time. That's fine. I'm not knocking that. But why in this magazine that they're handing out, why is it that there's these little sections throughout that it's like, why are we even doing that? But
Right.
it's not just a one random photo. It's like, oh no, this is strategic that they're putting this in there. And throughout the 60s, you see a lot of that too in different circles where there's like weird shit in the Hollywood scene with the Vito Polakis guy who is like connected to Mondo Hollywood and the dance troops and the Sunset Strip, Frank Zappa, freaking Laurel Canyon, you know, their son Gatto, who died by falling through a fucking window of a ceiling. I mean, and there's accounts that I've read where people talk about, like, there's interviews where they're like, oh yeah, that child was like passed around, like literally and figuratively in these circles. And so for some reason, there's always this connection that I see within these groups.
It
like
makes
that.
perfect sense. And this brings up a good point that I can't believe we haven't mentioned yet or whatever. These big PSYOP campaigns, these big sort of agendas and stuff like that, I'll say it feels to me like it mostly is about the children always.
Yeah.
It's about indoctrinating the children. It's about the next generation. So as an example, some of the PSYOPs that we've gone through, I'm not going to name names, in our lifetime, you know, going through it as an adult, you know, a few years ago, right? It's just like, wow, I can't believe that everything is changing so quickly, and I can't believe they're doing this and doing that and all this other stuff, and everyone's in a tizzy and blah, blah, blah. When you really step back and look at it, is like, is this for the adults or is this for the children?
And who got attacked the most?
Exactly.
Who got pulled out of school and put on the internet? Who got, you know, who got taken away from all of that shit, you know? For better or for worse, I don't believe in public schools. I don't believe that that's a good system. But, you know, they definitely did a number on the children during that
100%. So to me, I think a lot of this stuff, yes, the adults are affected. Yes, the young adults are affected. Yes, the youth, they're affected. But really, I think it's just like you're laying the groundwork for the next generation.
Yep.
You know, and they're going to be, these are going to be their first memories.
Yep.
Oh, I remember seeing this and that on TV, or I remember mommy told me this and that, or whatever it is. You know, so yeah, of course, it's like the children it's where it's at. You're going to get more bang for your buck that way, I think, if you were to strategically focus on the children than focusing on the adults. The adults, a lot of them, it's just like they're already conditioned already.
Right.
Because they were programmed as kids too. So.
Right. And then it's like a lot of these children, or when you read these stories, it's like a lot of them were given LSD at really young ages, like absurdly young. The child I brought up, Gatto, Vito's kid, it's recorded that he was given LSD at the age of 2. Damn. That's going to fuck you up. I mean, there's no way that it's not going to change your chemistry if you're a 2-year-old and you're given that. And so I think, too, the hippy dippy mentality and free love and all that stuff, like there was a hypersexualization of everything. And so these hippies having kids and bringing them to festivals, and there's communes and the whole thing, you know, oh, well, we need to show them. We don't need to hide this from them. And that's still the same narrative that's going through right now.
It's even more hardcore now, though, right?
Exactly. So it's like that same narrative that we're seeing now that's like to the extreme,
right?
You know, where we're, you know, teaching, you know, kids to change their gender in school and talk about this and that and drag queen reading hour and all the stuff. It's like, this stuff was seeded so long ago. Yeah. And in the 60s is where it really started. And so I think that it's very, very important to note that when you're looking into this stuff.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you.
And it's always something that sticks out to me, because when I would go through that book, and we've sold it actually since. So it's just one of those books. It's a rare book, and we had the DVD, and it came with all the stuff, and we decided to sell it, you know, just because it's like, well, we're selling it, you know. And so it just, every time I go through there, I could not see that.
Right.
And know that there's something bigger going on.
Yeah.
And the dogs are the same way. The kids and the dogs, they're treated the same way. And so there's also a lot of stuff tied to like animal sacrifice with the process. If you do digging, that they were into animal sacrifice. There was blood. They usually just say animals, but yes, dogs specifically, and that there would be like a string of dead German shepherds found like near wherever they were or whatever. There's accounts of that kind of stuff. And so I think too, like if they're treating the children and the dogs in the same nature, are they the sacrifices? Just a thought.
Interesting.
So,
well,
yeah.
I just have to say, I know this is my line of thinking with a lot of things. super mercurial. They used to dogs would be sacrificed at the crossroads.
Oh, right.
And this was like a mercurial sort of thing.
And then
ritual.
Hecate and everything.
Hecate, who
Yep.
I kind of look at as kind of like a feminine Mercury, even though heavily connected to the moon, but so is Thoth, who's Egyptian mercurial figure. So I think, I don't know, as we're talking about all this stuff, I just see kind of the fingerprint of Mercury all over the place. But I say that a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, it's pretty prevalent throughout so many things.
So is there, are there any other well-known established people before we move on to other aspects of stuff? That's all I can think of, but I'm gonna check my notes.
Well, there's a guy named Timothy Wilde or Timothy Wilde, and he and Genesis P. Orridge put out a book that was published by Feral House Publishing. Feral House Publishing has some pretty great books that they put out, so I would say look into them if you're into like more occult, obscure information. But it was Timothy Wilde who was a member, and then there's also, I can't remember the name now. I think it was the filmmaker though that you talked about, because I remember reading something about a filmmaker.
Right.
I just didn't write his name down. But there were also two other. I think like the band Love had a connection with the Process Church and was maybe dabbling. And the band Love was also connected to the Manson family because Bobby Beausoleil was connected to the band Love. I don't know if he was a member at one point or if he just played music with them or something, but there's mention of that even in the book I'm reading, Lynette Fromm's book right now, which is called Reflection. She talks about that.
Right.
And so I just think that these Hollywood types, these musicians, like you were saying, they're kind of drawn to this kind of stuff, I think, with the lifestyle. And so as you even research Manson and all that stuff, you find out that these people are like doing snuff films and they're into weird sex shit and they're pedophiles, or they're into trafficking, they're into drugs. And so I think that there was a draw towards this sort of stuff during that era. As much as one side was love and peace and everything else, I think the opposite side was definitely being displayed as well. And yeah.
Right.
But I can't, off the top of my head, no, I don't know of any other names.
Me neither.
Okay.
There is a documentary about the Process Church. You may have to pay for it. It's called Sympathy for the Devil.
Yeah, what do you know?
Yeah, right. And so they actually interview some of these people and talk about process stuff.
But it stays pretty surface level.
It does, but it does give you an insight. It shows a lot of interesting photography.
Yeah, it does.
And stuff
For that
like that.
stuff, it's good.
And then scans from the magazine. And actually, for what it is, too, it's decently produced, I would say.
Yeah, it is. It totally is.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but you can probably find it for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So anything else that you feel like you wanted to cover?
I mean, I think that's a pretty good covering. I think I got through all my notes too.
I have two questions then.
With more.
Yeah.
That came out, so.
So, did you already mention, and maybe you've just told me this in the past or something, were they were like recruiting people on Haight and Ashbury, right?
Yes.
And were they handing out acid, or were they like doing anything like that, or was it just like pamphlets and stuff?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were, but I don't know. I've never read anything that talks about that, but that wouldn't surprise me.
And then, did you ever mention something that they were...
I did think about two other things, actually.
Go ahead.
But you finish your
Were
thing.
they connected to the free clinic? Or were they like next to it or something like that?
That I can't say, but the free clinic came up again today for me.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh shit, there's such a big weave with the free clinic. And they were all about the drugs. They were like, they were known for distributing and handing out and experimenting drugs on people and things like that. One of the heads of the free clinic was actually in charge of rodent studies and meth.
What?
And he was one of the people that observed that when you gave meth to mice and rodents, that they became aggressive. And then what started showing up on the streets of Haight and Ashbury not long after that? Meth. And then there was this whole like the what's their name? The violent rah-rah group. the underground.
Weather
Underground, the chaos movement. There's like a whole kind of thing with that, and meth was introduced like very, very closely to their origins, and they were all about the anger and destroying and kind of like Antifa stuff. I think that they were kind of origins of Antifa, in my opinion, because a lot of their behaviors are the same.
Militaristic leftism, extreme liberalism, or whatever.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the other things that I just thought of with the process now. I can't 100% confirm it, but I've heard other people talk about it, and you'll probably remember his name, but he was a guy on the East Coast. He had a show. He used to use the Superman logo for his thing. He used to complain a lot. What was his name? Anyway, he links the process to...
What show where? Online, on YouTube?
It was a podcast. I can't remember his name.
Use the Superman logo?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, Ed Opperman?
Ed Opperman. Okay, Ed Opperman had put out some information, and I'm pretty sure he was a detective at one point or something.
He's a private investigator.
Okay, he was a private investigator, and he was making connections that the process...
Used to complain a lot. That's hilarious. If anyone here knows who he is, that's super funny.
Well, yeah, because he would always show me his posts, and he's just like victim mindset complaining about some shit, and it's like, dude...
He
just
knows
talk
a lot
about the information. Like,
he knows a lot about true crime type stuff.
Right. So he had gone down a rabbit hole of connecting the Process Church to what was called the Smiley Face Killer.
Right. Yes, I remember this a little bit.
And I will say that I have a bit of a personal connection to this. Number one, because the Smiley Face Killer, if that, that's what they called him, because the whole thing that you would hear on the news is that they would leave a smiley face near the bodies, near the victim. And in Wisconsin, particularly in college towns, this was a huge string of murders. And the story was always the same. It was a kid or a student was out at the bar with his friends or her friends. It was usually guys, though. It was usually always men. And they would go missing. They would interview the people they were with the night before, and they'd say, well... I don't know. He was just gone at one point, and he didn't say bye. And anyone who hangs out in bars and had that time of their life, there a lot of times people will just ghost. They'll just leave, and then you're like, well, where did so and so go? I don't know. Chug a lug, and then you're in such a party mode that you don't even think about it. And so the thing with these murders would always be that these men would disappear. And men of stature that were strong, or they were athletes or something. And they would turn up in the rivers in Wisconsin. A lot of this stuff happened in, if I'm remembering, it was Appleton, Wisconsin. I'm forgetting the other name, but Superior is another one. But there's some big universities up in the more the northern area of Wisconsin, central northern Wisconsin, and that's where a lot of it happened. And a handful of them took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And I can't confirm this, but one of my cousin's best friends, this same thing happened to him. He was out for St. Patrick's Day. He was with friends. He just wasn't, no one knew where he went. He was missing for 2 weeks, and he came up in the Milwaukee River.
Damn.
And I'll never forget, I was living in Portland when it happened, but my mom calling me and saying, do you remember Tom Hecht? And I was like, yeah, it's Tony's good friend. Yeah, he just turned up in the Milwaukee River. And I was like, wait, what? Now I hung out with this guy. I mean, I remember him, because I was very close with my cousins. So we would hang out and go out and all this stuff. And I remembered him, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck? And then I remember researching it, and it was like, wow, this is the same story that happens all over the place.
Right.
And my first thought was, is this another smiley face murder thing? And then what happens to these people? There usually isn't any sign of there's no cuts, there's no bullets, there's no nothing. And so anyway, it was kind of never really dove into. And at the time of my life, I mean, I knew this kind of stuff at that point, but I did as much research as I could. And you know how it goes on the mainstream news. It's they tell you just a little bit, and even my cousin didn't know very much. Anyway, long story short, this happens a lot in that region, and so the process was sort of Ed Opperman saw connections to that. They're also connected to perhaps the Summer of Sam murders.
I was trying to think of the name of the Summer of Sam stuff. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
So there's that too. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't have enough evidence to connect it. But if they're as powerful and as on the underground as they seemingly are, you know.
And I'll just say one of the things that I do remember about the Summer of Sam story is that there's a dog involved. Did you ever see the Summer of Sam movie?
No.
I can't remember the guy's name. Tall actor, lanky guy, black hair, super good. Can't remember his name, but it was one of his earlier films. And who knows how accurate it is. But one of the things that they say about Summer of Sam, and they show it in the movie, is that the killer is said to get his directions or is prompted to kill from a dog.
Really?
Yeah, so they literally show him, and he's like a punk rocker, I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
And it's like literally the dog is like barking at him or looking at him or whatever, and he's getting like the thoughts of like, you have to do this and that and everything else. That it was the dog that directed him to kill.
Huh,
so given the fact that we've talked about dogs multiple times tonight, that's kind of random, isn't it?
Yeah, knowing their connection to him. I want to see that movie now.
Totally. Yeah, David Berkowitz. Yeah, totally.
Interesting. Yeah, so anyway, those were the last two things that popped in my mind.
Oh, no. Okay, I think there might be a difference between Summer of Sam and Son of Sam. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it wasn't Summer of Sam in New York.
I'm thinking of Summer of Sam. What the hell? I'm thinking of, Summer of Sam in New York.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That's what I'm thinking
That's
of.
what I remember.
But Booty Yoga, he's saying Son of Sam. We I don't know.
Okay. Oh, so different. Right. Okay.
So which one is it? I can't off the top of my head. I'd have to look
with the
into
process is Summer of Sam.
For sure, Summer of Sam.
For sure, Summer of Sam
Okay, gotcha.
is what they're associated with, and I'm pretty sure Ed Opperman even goes into that when he talks about
that's what clicks to me. Yeah.
The smiley face killer or whatever. So
right.
Anyway, worth looking into. Worth looking up Ed Opperman. I don't know if he still even puts stuff out, but he has a few shows on this, and his background as a private investigator allowed him to put these things together. So he's not just pulling it out of thin air and going like, yep, they're connected. It's like he knows kind of things to look for, would know or have access to, information perhaps where he could do research to confirm it and whatever. So yeah, that's definitely with the Process Church. I think that's the most of it. But, the hog farm is another one.
I wonder, because we spent a lot of time on Process Church.
Yeah.
You want to get into the hog farm now, or you want to get into it some other time?
We can do it another time because, yeah, we did. We spent almost an hour. We spent most of all of the episode on that. So I'm totally good to wait because actually we could tie the hog farm into the Woodstock episode because they are all over Woodstock.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we should do that.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
So let's read the comments and see what's going on. And then if we have any final thoughts, obviously, we'll get to that. But thanks again, guys, for hanging out. I've seen some comments come through, and there's some interesting stuff.
And I'm not surprised, too, that the process ended up taking up.
No, I'm not surprised either.
Most of all of it. But damn, it's interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't
and
remember.
the fact that it's still going in its
I
own
know.
way. It's just like these things are so powerful and meant to be in place that,
Totally.
Animal sanctuary, nonprofit, what?
Interesting. Yeah. So the branch is saying there's also a connection between animal rights and children's rights. Animals got rights prior to children. That is how children got rights. Wow.
Damn.
That's interesting. I don't know if I knew that. All right. Cool. Cruising through these as quickly as I can, seeing what's relevant. Right, someone called it Skinny Puppy Process.
Yeah, that's the album. And I'm going to actually listen to them because like I said, heard of them, but didn't really ever get into them.
Slick, always decoding. Process. Seth. Does it have anything to do with Seth? He's just speculating there,
Right.
as he should. Zerlis is saying Skinny Puppy is basically pre-Marilyn Manson. I can see that.
Okay.
Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. George Clinton was all about chaos too. I've heard some stories that Bootsy Collins on video talking about some crazy tour bus stories. Yeah, he looks like he'd be interested in that.
Yeah, dude. He was like super out there for the time, I would say.
Oh yeah, Jimmy Savile's connections go deep.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like knighted and stuff, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm not
exactly.
mistaken.
Right. And hello to the people we haven't shouted out yet. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Very interesting. All right, spiritual anarchy. It was a shoot off of the process. I was being indoctrinated, and these groups cross over. It's deep. My ex joked he was Manson, and they do sacrifice or murder. They also take life force through tantry.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was an offshoot. Okay, yeah, because I know that like when the process eventually broke off, like Marianne had her own thing, and now I don't remember the thing about it, but the name. I should have written it down, but I know that she broke off and like focused more on the Christianity stuff, and then Robert de Grimston's kind of tried to keep things going, but I don't know if that continued or not. So very interesting. Thank you for sharing spiritual anarchy.
Yeah. So she's saying here, she brought up Julian Assange and the fact that he was from a cult called the Family. So there's more than one cult called the Family, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then even, mafia groups sometimes call themselves the Family and stuff like that. Right. Okay, so there's this ex-cop on YouTube from NYC who talks all about process church and like sacrifice stuff at rich parties where biker gangs ran security at these mansions in New York. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. There's a total weave there with everything else. Which I'm very excited to get into the hog farm because they have total. There's so many connections with the hog farm, and the hog farm is still going. They're wavy gravy. Yikes.
And just an aside too, so that's why they have or fund animal shelters to get access to animals for their sacrificial rituals. These animal shelters, the majority of them, I would probably guess, aren't what they're cracked up to be.
Yeah, like the bigger ones I think aren't. There's probably definitely small. I know there's smaller ones that are on the up and up, but yeah. Humane Society also not good. Don't go there.
But yeah, dog sacrifice is a Hecate signature, and then Cozy Crone is saying Hecate is the wife or lover Mercury. Yeah. So what I have always thought, what's stuck in my mind is Mercury being the lord of the crossroads, and then Hecate being the lady of the crossroads, and the lunar symbolism between the two, and then lunar symbolism as it relates to the dog. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to say about that, but you guys are totally right.
And I said, don't go to the Humane Society, but don't support them, I guess. Like, if you donate money to them or all that stuff, like, I don't think that they're doing good things. But I would encourage people to adopt an animal, I guess, if you wanted to from them. But my mom and my stepdad had a really bad experience with them. And yeah, anyway.
Yeah, it's not good. We've talked about it before.
We have.
I don't know if this is a joke. Didn't Ace of Base have a connection? I don't know if you're talking about something else, if I'm missing something in the convo, but that's hilarious. And that'd be funny if it were true.
Hey, they saw the sign, so.
Yeah, it's the process church symbol. Right. Okay. Take a little trip with me. I have to ask, is LSD really that bad? Seriously, though.
No.
Yeah, no, we don't think so. We've taken it. It's interesting.
I think, though, for like a 2-year-old child, it probably wouldn't be the best idea. But I think that with anything, it can be used nefariously or overused or whatever.
It can be weaponized.
Yeah, definitely. And
it's
that's,
been weaponized.
I think, what happened during that era. But by no means do I think it's bad.
Right.
Definitely partaken and enjoyed myself. So
Jerry Gar CIA.
That's a good one.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty much accurate.
Gotcha. Okay. Michael Hoffman, Secret Society's book details Son of Sam as a patsy for ritual murders. Interesting. Yeah, that book's been on my radar for a long time. I've never gotten around to it. I've never ordered it, but I am familiar. That's interesting. And I've said this before on other chats, dude. You usually have really good comments, so thanks for hanging out with us.
So Cozy Crone is saying she remembers them in Winona and La Crosse. Thank you. That is one of the main colleges that I do remember. And I had a girlfriend that was at lacrosse, and I remember when all this was happening, and she was freaked out, rightfully so.
All right. I think we're getting close to the end here, maybe.
Yeah. This is a fun one. Fun.
She was excited about this one, guys.
Yeah. And it was literally the one that like came through last night. A lot of times, like some of the best ideas just come at the last minute, right?
Totally. Gotcha. Let's see. I think it kind of like, for some reason, zipped past all of these. It just kind of like reloaded or something. So again, just 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, Kabir. Yeah. So we're on 2 different channels right now. So we're both on Michelle's channel and my channel. So we're streaming simultaneously. So that's the reason why.
Oh, gotcha.
Right. Some good comments, guys. Just tangential stuff, but I appreciate it as always. Okay, Slick is gonna try and leave a voicemail in the Telegram, so we'll check that at the end of these comments, dude. Sounds good. So that was 7 minutes ago. Hopefully you're leaving it or you just left it. I'm sure he has some interesting things to say as usual. Got it.
What's
cool.
the name of the book we're talking about up there? So it was Propaganda and the Holy Rite of the Process Church. If you find it, it's pretty expensive right now for the original copy. But there's a reprint that just came out this year, and you can get it for like $40. But the original copy's going for a lot.
Right. So get that reprint.
And it's great. If you're interested in this, I do recommend it because it's very interesting.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. Awesome. I'm going to check the Telegram, see what's going on.
Nice. Sounds good. Yes. So freaking, yeah, this was a great one. And, the Manson thing too, I just think that the thing in jail that he was visited is very telling to me, and why they wouldn't want to be connected. So also one of the things with the process is Ed Sanders, who I mentioned earlier, he wrote the book called The Family. And if you have to get the original copy. In the original copy, the original release, he talks about the Process Church. Now, the Process came at him and sued him, and they sued the publisher, and they published the book, and they took out all the information on the Process. And then soon after that is when Manson was talked to in prison and all of that stuff. So, and I really did like Ed Sanders' book at the time, but I think that like a lot of the other more propaganda-based books, he might be more in that realm. But it's worth a read if you're into Manson and stuff. I really enjoyed it.
All right. We got some slick, dissident, exclusive voicemails.
Right on.
On Telegram. All right. So we've got a few. I'm going to play them, and we'll chat about it, yeah?
All right.
Hey guys, great topic tonight. I'm kind of late to the discussion, but very exciting material. I've been following the smiley face thing a little bit. Also, the Order of the Nine Angles. There is something really morbidly fascinating about the whole thing, but I just wanted to share this little personal experience, anecdotal. I was on an airplane listening to a cadet brag to his seat neighbor behind me. He had just got done with training, and in his training, he had been spending at least a week infiltrating urban terrain and pretending to be homeless, and reporting back at the end of the week to his superiors and telling them intel on how the homeless community works. I do not know the city, but his superiors were periodically rolling through urban terrain
Uh-oh. We're shorting out here.
in their SUVs trying to snap pictures of him, and he was receiving demerits if he was seen by the SUVs or if he showed up on CC cameras. Is that what they call it? CCT cameras? So they were actually studying urban infiltration as a cadet, and he was bragging about it. There were more details. I'm a little foggy on it, but all of this really hits a note if you're really into this research, because apparently some of these assassinations are incredibly highly organized, accessing things that are very military grade sophistication. Okay, I thought I would share that, and I think I'm done ranting, but yeah, big hugs everybody, much love and respect. Okay, no, I'm not done ranting. There was something else. Vigilante. Vigilantism has been kind of instilled since childhood in American culture, and a really fascinating example is Batman. I was like in my 30s when it dawned on me that Batman was a ninja. It never even occurred to me that he was a ninja. So there's just something kind of nifty about the fact that there's this vigilante programming in our culture. And then this is why I'm speaking of it on the smiley face killer thing. For one, he's running around in a gimp suit, the tights, the spandex. That's kind of a weird gimp suit thing, right? Which is dominant, BDSM. But there's also the aspect of having a public signature. The bat signal is a psychological plug for the smiley face that they always leave at the scenes of the crime. So it's anti-Batman, it's it's a freaking Joker signature is what it is. It's anti-Batman. So yeah, just thought I would, anode, cathode, that mofo. Big love, everybody. Much respect. Oh man, I just remembered another random detail just floated across my heavens while we were on the show. But I just wanted to share it because I keep failing to speak this little nugget. Isle of Man. The Isle of Man has been on the radar for a very long time. Did a show with Juan and Rachel on Laura Croft in the Tomb Raider series. In the most recent one, they went to the Isle of Man to shoot on site. And the random facts about that location actually add up to a bigger picture. If you know what you're seeing, it has to do with those tailless cats. The Manx cats have no tail. And there's also motorcycle racing of epic proportions on that island, like globally acknowledged racing. And those two combinations, that's toxoplasmosis, was identified to cause risk-taking behavior because they found high concentrations in the blood of motorcycle gangs. There was a high amount of motorcycle accidents, and they found out that there was a concentrated statistical likelihood of risk-taking and toxoplasmosis. So those two random facts are just the crowning achievement of that island. Okay, and also I Love Man, right? I Love Man. There's also something about experimentation on islands, all throughout writing, but then there's also the experimentation on homosexuality, which is the Hades from the 80s. All right. I promise, I'm done.
Oh, interesting, dude. Oh my gosh. Of course.
Nice weaves.
You're going in directions I did not see coming. So
the Hades
that's
of
awesome.
80s.
Just because it's the last thing you said, but regarding the toxoplasmosis situation on the Isle of Man, that's fascinating with the risk-taking sort of business. Was unaware of that totally. Not surprised you would throw that out there. You brought up the Order of Nine Angles.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, and it reminds me of a book. And if you have not looked into this fellow here, I would suggest you check him out if you're wanting to pull more at that thread. It's a book that Christy gave me,
Okay.
actually. So just 1 second.
All right. And as always, Christy always throws down on books, on some awesome books, actually. So I'm assuming it's going to be one of those connect the dots sort of things.
Okay, so one of the guys who talks about the Order of Nine Angles, and he has got, I mean, I don't know, I have not checked in on him lately.
Is this the pajama pants guy, or she used to call him pajama pants or something?
Yeah,
Okay, I remember who he is.
totally.
Yeah.
So if you guys want more information on Order of the Nine Angles with their sinister behaviors and connections and all sorts of other stuff, this guy is a good resource. So his name is Nathaniel J. Harris, and this is one of his books. It's called The Neuronomicon. I have to admit, I have not read this yet, but I've come across a number of his interviews, and I can't remember if he had like
He had a YouTube channel.
like an official podcast or whatever. He definitely had a YouTube channel, but he gets into the Order of Nine Angles in a significant sort of way. So Slick, I don't know if you've checked him out, but you should give him a go, because what he has to say about them, very, very, very interesting. So they are absolutely worth talking about at some point, I would say.
Is he the guy that talks about the pedophilia and like satanic abuse in Boscastle, or in
Yeah.
Cornwall and,
Yeah.
and Boscastle specifically?
Yeah, totally.
Which, by the way, Boscastle is one of my all-time favorite places.
Right.
in Cornwall, England. It's freaking magical. But there's a long history of witchcraft and
Oh, yeah.
all sorts of stuff there, which is one of the reasons I was drawn to it, to be honest, because there is such a feeling there that, back in the day, that this was a mecca, for wise women and people who were just, living on the land. When you say the word witch, there's a lot of different ways people look at it, but, the original witches were the healers, the herbalists, the medicine women of the village.
Right.
And you can feel that spirit there.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Like for sure, to the max. But
Yeah, so his whole thing is specifically a lot of guys, it's one of these things that's really wild to even think about. But if you're going to roll with people who are interested in black magic, chaos magic, that kind of stuff, don't don't be surprised if at some point, if you're really in these circles and hanging out with these types of people, that they're up to no good.
Yeah, it's true.
And so it's just one of these things.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but it's
but-
just one of these things where it's just like, well, that's not really surprising, really, when you think about it. So.
SB, what's up, Sean? Good to see you, my friend.
What's up, Sean? How's it going, man?
He's asking who you just mentioned.
Okay, so this guy right here. So Nathaniel J. Harris, and he has this book called The Neuronomicon. And I don't know if he gets into the Order of Nine Angles in here, because I have not read this, but it just I was reminded of him because Slick left a voicemail, and he just briefly brought them up, but I don't really talk to too many people about this.
Right.
But Nathaniel here has put out a lot of information. I don't know if it's still online, because I know things were getting very...
he was
tricky
getting
for him.
attacked.
Yeah, basically he was getting attacked.
Yeah.
And so he may or may not have his Order of Nine Angles stuff on the internet still.
Right. Yeah. But I do remember that, because I remember Christy sending us videos, and I remember watching some of them. And he was just like going for it at that point, where he was like, I can't not talk about this now, because I know.
And he was like naming specific names. Actually,
and that's what was getting him in trouble, which is usually what gets him in trouble. But
I'm not going to look right now, but I think he has a smaller book just about this stuff.
Okay.
Actually, he does. He has a smaller book just about this stuff. I borrowed it from Christy, or I bought it, and then I sold it back to her.
Okay.
Or whatever. So he's making this his mission to like out some of these people and like out what happens in a lot of these groups and the orchestrated pedophilia, basically, with all of it, and how it's like institutionalized and it's been around for a long time, and it's people you wouldn't expect are in it, and all that kind of stuff. So,
and if I remember right, he's English, right?
Yeah.
So
totally.
who knows? I don't remember fully, but he might have like actually firsthand. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was being bold, Because I remember we went to Invoke one time to see Christy, and she was like, oh my God, I'm watching this guy right now. And she was calling him Pajama Pants because he always wore pajama pants. She's like, oh my God, I just call him Pajama Pants, but he's putting out these videos and it's crazy and you guys have to watch it. And I almost can't believe he's doing it, whatever. And that was years ago. I mean, I don't know, probably like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe 4. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was a while ago. So anyway, yeah.
Totally.
Hopefully people can find it if they're still interested or wanting to look into it.
For sure. Alrighty. Just reading the final comments here, guys. Thank you once again. This is fun.
Yeah, this was a great one.
I don't know what this is in reference to, Elliot, but I'm interested. Sacrifice to Ursa Major.
Well, perhaps
interested in learning more, basically.
Perhaps he's referring to the 4-pointed cross that we were talking about that the process uses.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Because it definitely has the Ursa Major shape to it.
Right. True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Awesome, guys. I think that's going to do it. What do you think, bub?
I think so.
Okay, cool. But
hitting the 2-hour mark.
We are. Not too bad. Once again, if you want to support, patreon.com/thehealinghome.
Dude, Andrea, you're awesome. I aim to have a cool name like Pajama Pants.
We'll just call you Pajama Pants.
I was going to say, you got it.
It actually seems very fitting, honestly. So patreon.com/thehealinghome for Michelle, and then patreon.com/symbolic studies for me. And next week, you're going to be talking to the rune woman, Ingrid Kincaid.
And so are you.
That's right. That's true.
Yeah, we're doing a joint episode with Ingrid. And speaking of Christy, we met Ingrid through Christy and through the Shop Invoke because we came across her one time at one of there was a street festival going on in Portland where we lived, right off the main road where Christy had her shop. And Ingrid was there doing rune readings. And I got a rune reading with her. And I said this at the end of last Tuesday, the Healing Home on Tuesday. But when I got my rune reading, I remember saying to you afterwards, I really enjoyed it. But I remember feeling this strong thing with Ingrid of like, I felt like I was like looking at myself as an old woman across the table.
Right.
There's some kinship.
Well, yeah, you just look at the both of you.
Yeah, you look at us, and then I'm sure there's some ancestral kind of thing going on. And so, but I was like, oh my God, this is like me when I'm like in my 60s. So not whatever, her essence, I would say. But,
oh, yeah, totally.
So we're excited to talk with her because we're going to talk runes. We're going to talk about her connection with the runes, how she studies them, how she came to find them, and we're also going to talk Northern symbolism. So she has a lot of really great crossover with Mario's information and what he's been coming across.
If you guys are liking the polar symbolism, North Star stuff, I would definitely tune in because we were fortunate enough to have a private conversation with her where I kind of just vomited all of my polar northern stuff on her.
Yeah.
And I loved her feedback, and she's down and she's into it, and she added to the conversation, and she knows certain things and all of that. And it's really cool. She's all about the runes. She has rune tattoos all over the place. That's like her thing.
Yeah.
And she rides a motorcycle, and she doesn't take any shit from people.
Yeah,
and
she's
cool. I really like her. So and she's a local too, so we'll be talking to her on Tuesday. And then your next full moon offerings newsletter is coming out later this month.
Yep, there's 2 full moons in August.
Right.
So this next full moon is a blue moon. And I'll talk more about that in my newsletter, actually. A blue moon, what a pop culture blue moon is versus a true blue moon, because there's a difference.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a write-up about that in my newsletter coming up. So if you want to learn more about that, you can sign up for my newsletter, and I'll have a little article in that issue talking about the blue moon.
Totally. And also, you just released a full moon offering.
I did, on the
And
1st.
What did you have for that?
For that, we have fresh garden mugwort. And it's a tincture. And I say garden mugwort just so everybody knows. It's garden-grown mugwort in our garden, fertilized with love and fish fertilizer and all the lovely things that plants like. So this mugwort is very potent. It's like the end of my current batch that I have. So there's only 3 left, actually. But I will have more mugwort coming down the pipeline within the next few months because I've got another tincture macerating right now as we speak.
Totally. That's awesome.
Yep.
So here's her current menu.
Yeah, current menu, we've got the mugwort tincture, 1 ounce, $18. I also have my fresh mugwort tincture and anointing oil set, which a lot of people might know as the Dream Team. So this is a really great way to open up your dream line, to expanding it, because it comes with a tincture and it comes with an anointing oil, and the anointing oil has a lot of uses, opening up the dream portal, but also really wonderful for menstrual cramps as a belly rub. And also James and Najla of Grounded Extracts used it for their baby for diaper rash, and they said it was one of the best remedies for diaper rash that they ever came across. So that mugwort is nice and magical. Nice, Ben. Made him dream, and he's always saying how he doesn't dream, so that's cool. And yeah, so that set's available as well. So hit me up if you're wanting some mugwort. michelleshealinghome@gmail.com for orders and all other inquiries, questions, want to pick my brain, what have you. michelleshealinghome.com to sign up for the newsletter, read my blog, all the good things. You can go there or call and text me on my Google Voice number at 503-568-1569.
There you go. Very cool. I included this in here because you just had a chat with Emily.
Yes. Just talked with Emily, Astro Yoga. Really nice chat, actually. I mean, she's a very intelligent woman. She's very well spoken. She knows her shit. And I've known that about her for a while, having listened to her other interviews and actually been able to talk with her on our last Astro Herbs episode. So that was really cool. And that's what prompted me to ask her for a chat. So we got into it, and it's really nice. So check that out. And it's not up on Spotify yet. I still have to upload that, but it is on YouTube on my channel. So check that out.
And then I put this here for a couple reasons. One, I did a live stream with Longo from Old World, Florida. He asked if I wanted to do a show on the periodic table of elements. I said, sure. I did research. We talked about it. And I was kind of surprised, to be honest. I don't know why, but a handful of people reached out and they said very interesting stuff. And some people liked it. And Ben Balderson, who's here right now, he had some stuff to say. And I think it would be worth my while. It's worth our while to get together, talk about some of his thoughts. And Ben is like an actual like physical alchemist. He's working with shit. He's making things. And so there's no substitution for actually being hands-on. And as he says, being in the lab, right? And so we're going to get together next week and talk about more periodic table stuff. And I'll be seeing just like what his thoughts are regarding the atom and other elements. And I know he has a bunch of other stuff to say too. So I'm super stoked on that. So Ben, that's going to be a good time.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
And then also, it seems like forever ago, but we just did herbalism and astrology with Yiska.
Yeah, and that was a really nice conversation too. Really enjoyed her energy and getting to know her a little bit better.
Totally. So that was streamed to your channel and my channel as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's it. If people are interested in more of what I have to offer and all that, symbolicstudies.com. And you can find all my links. I do tarot readings. I've got stuff for sale. I got a blog. All the things.
You got a website. You got prints. You got study packets. You got tarot readings. You got study sessions.
Totally. And I think that'll do it, guys.
Yes. Wow. Thank you guys for rallying on this one, because, boy, how fun.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like, I know we maxed out, but I know I'm going to think of more things. So
yeah, I believe it.
But it's cool. We'll bring it back with the hog farm, because
totally.
I'm excited to talk about the hog farm, because there's so much sketchy shit with that too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. We'll do it.
Yeah.
Awesome, dudes. All right. Until next time.
All right. Later,
Take
guys.
care. See ya.
Bye.